Scripps News Live special coverage continues this evening. We are awaiting the press conference coming out of Fulton County, Georgia, where the district attorney, Fani Willis, is set to speak any minute now. We do know now that former President Donald Trump has been indicted.
That's it. Yeah, there are a lot of things
charges. Let me read a few of them to you. Racketeering, violating oath of office, and other charges in a bid to overturn the 2020 election. Again, this is now officially, we didn't want to say it before, but it is now officially the fourth criminal indictment against the former president.
That's it.
Trump, and he's not alone.
That's it. That's because there are some other names that we've had. At least, did we count them out already?
That are coming. Well, they're coming in right now over the transom. So as we get these in, we're going to share them with you. But in the meantime, I guess we're making some final adjustments before the district attorney gets in here. You know, this really is a moment that's going to be a capstone of sorts of the last 2.5 years of work that she's done to build this case. Of course, the really big test comes after this.
Right. How exactly does this, do we kind of proceed here? One of the things that we saw with the Trump announcement from the Trump team is that, you know, they took issue with how long this case took. You know, why did it wait? Why did we have to wait 2 years?
They said it's political.
It's political. Like, why did we have to wait so long for this? So
we now have our hands on the indictment of former President Trump, and he's not alone. As I said, let me read you the other folks who are indicted, and we'll hear from the DA pretty soon. Rudy Giuliani is second in line. John Eastman, who is the president's lawyer, a revered lawyer who was telling him this was all legal to have Mike Pence not count these votes. That was not correct. We have Mark Meadows here, the former chief of staff to the president in the White House. He's been kind of laying low lately. I think he cooperated in some of these cases because he was compelled to. You have the rest here?
Yeah, sure do. You've already mentioned John Eastman. This is a name that's come up before. Kenneth John Chesbro. Counts 1, 19, 11, 13, 15, 17, and 19. Jeffrey Bossert Clark. Jenna Lynn Ellis.
Jenna Ellis, a familiar face, a familiar name. I mean, she was someone who was standing behind Donald Trump in a lot of these press conferences, but she was more a campaign functionary, maybe a spokesperson or a face rather than a legal tactician. So I would love to talk to our legal eagles about that. But there are a few more names here as well. You have Ray Stalling Smith III, Robert Cheeley, Michael Roman, and then David Schaefer. Some of those people, I frankly have no idea who they are.
I was going to ask, this is the reason why I like doing this with you, because usually you have an idea of exactly who these people are. But some of these folks, I mean, some of these names we've heard before. Some of these names are names that have popped up in other other indictments. But some of these names are new, and we're still trying to figure out exactly who they are, what role they played in all of this.
Oh wait, there's a second page. I'm sorry, there's a second page. Sean Still, Stephen Lee. I'm not even going to read all of these names here, but we will share these on our website, of course, and you'll see them. But let's come.
Sydney Powell is listed here.
Oh, she is?
Sydney Catherine Powell is listed here as well.
Yeah, she is. Okay, so and then Misty Hampton, a.k.a. Emily Misty Hayes. So let's bring in Andrew Lieb and Doug Burns, who are with us. You both thought this was going to be 10-plus people, and you're right, I haven't counted them here, but I'm guessing that's 15 to 20 people involved here. Now, the one that jumps out to me is Mark Meadows. He was the president's chief of staff in the White House. Doug, what sort of criminal behavior would he be? Because I think it's violation of, he's involved in the RICO, they say. Does that sound about right?
Well, it's hard to break it down. I mean, I have to study it much more closely. I'm not hedging, but the point is, you have Rudy Giuliani, John Eastman, Sidney Powell, Mark Meadows. Those were the names that I would have expected. Those names, incidentally, track the unindicted co-conspirator list in the second federal indictment, particularly with respect to the Georgia section, which overlaps, as we discussed earlier. But no, basically the theory of it is going to be, that these people all acting in concert, that's the language for a conspiracy, went back and forth with theories that they knew were not correct, knew were not legally appropriate or viable. That's going to be the guts and core of the prosecution case in this matter.
Yeah, I want to bring in Andrew Lieb here while we're still waiting for the DA.
The clerk of court was there, and so we're still waiting.
We saw some movement there. We're still trying to figure out exactly when they're going to head to the podium. 19 names I just counted out here, including former President Donald Trump. What does this signal to you? The number of folks that are included in these in this indictment. What does that say to you
19.
about? I mean, 19. We knew we were thinking that there were at least a dozen names that we were going to see here, but this exceeds that. So, I mean, what is your take on the number of names that we're seeing in all of this?
Well, Christian, I first felt exactly like Chance expressed. I was like, who are these guys? I was going through the list as we were on break, and I was reading them all. I was like, I don't know that one. I know that one. I don't know that one. I know that one. I'll go back to your prior questions, though, and Meadows was on that call, that famous call with Brad Raffensperger, that call, the perfect call, as Donald Trump would say. So that could have some indication of it. We know that Chesebro is a big player because he's the person that dealt with that whole fake electors. He's the unindicted co-conspirator when it comes to dealing with the D.C. case. But what I see is a very vast network. I see that we're going to see this like an organized crime prosecution because there's so many different players that all played an integral part. Not to say this is organized crime. I don't want to say it like that at all. Just the breadth of it. So many different players, different lieutenants and chiefs and people in charge. And this one did this and that one did this. But I'll tell you the real takeaway. This trial is not happening for a long time. I could see jury selection alone in this, Christian, taking months and months and months with all of these defendants getting all of their day in court. We're talking this trial, I'm guessing, is happening after the election, Christian.
I see. So Jenna Ellis jumps out at me because apparently she is a lawyer, but she many times was a face of the Trump campaign. And I go down to Act 2 here, and it's on the 19th day of November, 2020. They say Rudy Giuliani, Sidney Powell, and then Jenna Ellis were there. And then an unindicted co-conspirator, individual 3, which if we look at the B-roll from that day, we can pretty well figure out who that is. But they talk about how they were behind Donald Trump, and they made false statements. He made false statements concerning fraud in the 2020 election in Georgia and elsewhere. And these were in furtherance of the conspiracy. So, Doug, you work for a campaign, you show up behind whoever the primary is, and the primary might be the actual candidate or might be the chief, or in this case, maybe Rudy Giuliani. You step back and you step over one slide so you can be seen by the cameras. Just being there or saying, yeah, I'm behind the president, that in and of itself can be a illegal conspiracy?
No, as we lawyers like to say, there are often lines, and lawyers can get close to the line and fortunately, for the most part, not cross those lines. But then there are times when you do. So to your question, no. What you articulated in and of itself alone, no, not necessarily. But Sidney Powell is alleged to have been involved with fraudulent claims about voting machines, specifically malfunctioning. And I think the allegation would be that Jenna Ellis similarly participated, but again, have to hang the same exact caveat, need to study the indictment, which of course I'll do ASAP when I have it in front of me. But again, I want to reiterate this point that, free speech is fine and expressing opinions is fine. But if they're going to allege criminal conduct, as they're doing here, then they are going to definitely be alleging and trying to prove, and may very well prove successful at it, that, lines were crossed, fraudulent representations were made, fraudulent claims, very specific claims about, how many people voted and it exceeded the amount that could be relevant, machines were rigged, and it went very, very far, is the allegation by the prosecutor in this case.
Including in the indictment, they say she did a lot more than just stand behind someone and lend her face to it.
Yeah, a few of the facts that we want to make sure that we're mentioning here: 41 criminal counts, 19 people. There are RICO Act violations, impersonating a public officer, forgery in the first degree, criminal attempt to commit influencing witnesses. for Andrew Lieb here, 19 people listed here, including the former president. With the last 30 seconds we have left, and forgive me because I'm a noob when it comes to a lot of this legal stuff. But is there, if you're the defense, are you worried about any of these other people? Flipping. Is this something that you would be worried about?
I would be certainly worried. I just watched a lot of Blue Bloods in my day, Christian. You don't need to be a lawyer. Just go turn on Law and Order or Blue Bloods, and you'll know that everyone's your best friend until they face jail time. And then all of a sudden they'll say, it's all your fault. It's you, it's you, it's you. And so I think this is a historic day.
Andrew,
and I think
Andrew, I'm sorry.
I think they're all aligned until they're not, Christian, and we'll see what shakes.
That's it. We're going to go to a break here real quick, folks, but we'll be right back.